AllReasonNoLogic.
G'day ladies and gentlemen, the Intermission series continues, and today we have the follow-on game from the previous one, and this time Cookie Destroyer is on our team. We're going to be focusing again on the highest OS player here, because this is where the most lessons are to be learned, but we will also take a couple of looks back down at the other lanes as we go along. You're joining us on Tar Step, and one of the things that is very interesting about this map is just how much metal there is available. Each lane has themselves 4 mexes to start with, 2 behind, and 6 in front that should be easily held. Then in the middle there's another 4 that are hotly contested. It's a lot of metal, and these 2.4s here are a very big deal. If you can get those T2'd nice and early, it's going to be a lot of metal. So the early map control is going to be quite important, and we see coming out of Cookie Destroyer, we've got a vehicle plant, and it's going straight into 3 rovers. Early enough that they can still make quite a difference. Then you can see 4 constructors. That's a really aggressive production start, but with all of the mexes here, I'm expecting one's going to go around the back, one's going to go up the side, another one's going to go up the side, and the one that's left will stay in at the base. Cookie Destroyer himself will most likely be heading up to the front to secure those 2.4s. The faster you can get to the front, the better. So let's talk a little bit about these rovers. Getting spam into your enemy's base early on does a couple of things. It's going to tell you what they're going, whether it's vehicles or bots, and it's going to delay them at least to an extent. They have to pull the frontline units they were going to have back to defend this. The comm needs to be in place to deal with it. 3 rovers is an absolutely tiny investment to get this done. And the question is, how good is your control? They have great vision range, and you can see here just dancing just outside of the pawns range. Does nearly get caught, but again, controlling these units really well to get around the units that are already there. Response out of the teal player, and now the rovers are heading on into the back. So they've run into the comm and they've done the right thing. They've seen it and they can get out of range before anything happens, but the teal player has closed the gap. So what's he trying to do? Take the damage he can get. That's the res bot. And if you can grab the res bot, that's going to slow it down, because you know that if someone's gone a res bot, they're not going to have too much wind. Things you can do here is try to hide them, but at the end of the day, only so much can be done with those units if you only have a certain amount of APM to devote to them. Because if you look at the back over here, we're seeing construction turret going down, a builder heading up each of the front lanes, and then I think one of these will probably head down to the back after that construction turret goes down. So the build here out of Cookie has been to go into the 4 mexes with 2 solars and 6 wind. And that's as much energy as he's going to have until the construction turret is finished, and then we'll see where those units go. We'll see how much they devote to units and how much they devote to base. That little distraction has kept his opponent in his base, and is also forcing an LLT response. When you get a player scared of run bys, you tend to force metal to be spent on the back line. Cookie also knows that the opponent's gone bots, and so the response has been to get Janus. Janus are quite good because you can lob that one shot off and take out both a group of pawns, or you can take out the Rocketeers without hopefully losing the Janus, repair up and go again. One of the other things they do is if you have 4 of them, you can instantly kill a comm. And there we go, one of those builders heading off to the back. And you can see a separate section of wind here, so even if somebody does run in to the base, they won't be grabbing all of the wind. It also saves travel time. The last build is being used to take care of the to get extra build power into the base. Alright, so on the front lines, Cookie's put down a LLT around the 2.4 mexes. If you're going to put one down, this is the place to do it, because it blocks off most of the main entryway into your base. It also helps to protect those 2.4 mexes, which are the most valuable ones you have. One thing which I'm actually surprised not to see is the radar just yet, but it does come down as soon as that mech goes, so basically right on when I would expect. That gives vision, and it tells Cookie exactly where he can and can't go, and we see was looking to grab that mechs up there with the comm, has immediately changed focus over to this side. And that's what you got to do. You got to make these decisions. And with plus 28 metal, Cookie's going to have plenty to work with. And that's why we're seeing a massive drop down of wind in the back. So on a map like this, there is a very high likelihood that you'll be able to get T2 rather quickly. That means getting more wind than you normally would. Because you have more metal as well, you can still maintain the army while you do it. So we're seeing a good balance here. We're also seeing build turrets right up the front. Those build turrets, I suspect, are going to be where we get the T2. As there's only one in the base, and builders have been used for build power, that is a really good indicator that Cookie's going to be going for a frontline T2, which is very smart because in the early stages when you can only get a couple of T2 units out, the travel time makes a big difference. On Supreme Ithmus, T2 units coming from the Geo spot, they can come out very early on, the 6 to 7 minute mark, but the question is, can they be useful? And the answer to that is not always yes, because they take too long to walk across and they come through in too fewer numbers. Gives the opponent more time to react. But in this situation, we are moving forward and potentially building it up the front. Now we're noticing how these Januses are being used right here. They're taking very minor damage from the Rocketeers, but every time they get a shot off, they are absolutely destroying those Rocketeers. And they're very good at pushing the defenses, and if it comes time to deal with a comm attack, to attacking the comm, it will have a very, very similar sort of response. Now, with only a handful of units on the front line, this is something which I talk about a lot. Pulling back in order to deal with what you have. Part of that was from a run-by, sorry I missed that, but a small run-by came through from the blue player, causing Cookie to pull his units back, but he's also using the space that he's gained as a weapon. This is a decently large number of units to fight with only a couple of Stouts and 4 Janus. These units were back dealing with it, so pulling back allows Cookie to get all of his units together and to fight this on a more even metal ground. Something to bear in mind is the metal you take forward into an engagement. Once you fight the first time, somebody's going to come out ahead, and every time you fight after that, they potentially can get that little bit further ahead. And that's one of the reasons you need to use land as a, or space as a resource. You can use it to take favorable engagements. For example, Cookie's just taken out 4 units at the cost of a tiny bit of health on a few of his. He's opened up the Rocketeers because there's now no more grunts to take shots, and now he's pushing that advantage. Unfortunately, with the tar, unit speed is not perfect, so slower engagement and harder to push with these Rocketeers. Fighting across and skirmishing across this is a really good idea, so taking a lot of damage on those Janus, but even then the Janus getting the rockets off, and once those rockets start hitting, you can see the damage. And this is where smart unit choice is really, really important. Cookie has picked smart units, and he's going in a direction that is forcing a reaction. The comm was easily picked there because the teal player had to react, otherwise these units would break through. There was enough of them to do a run past. That run by would have potentially destroyed the base. Instead, the units went and engaged and took an unfavorable engagement, aka taking Janus shots while clumped up. Cookie managed to effectively control the battlefield there, just through the smart application of the units that he had and smart unit choice. And this is something which, if you're going to be trying to jump to those higher OS, these are things you have to consider, because perfectly controlled Rocketeers will actually beat Janus, but that requires perfect control. And we're not going to see perfect control from nearly anyone. If you watch other RTSs like StarCraft, people still lose entire groups of Marines to Banelings, even in the pro leagues. And while this has been going on, because of that favorable engagement, Cookie's been able to use the metal that would have otherwise gone into units, reclaiming the lab at the back, having the wind built up over the course of the battle because of the higher income available, and then grabbing some of that reclaim straight into those T2 units, and those T2 units are going to be pivotal in the defense right here. Blue is doing significantly better against his opponent than just about anybody else, spilling over into the next lane and spilling over all the way into Cookie's lane. This LLT is doing the job that we talked about earlier. It's helping to guard this first little section, more coming down using the build power, but really it is the Mousers that are the MVPs right here, just laying on that huge amount of damage to those T1 units. And then we do see a couple of Jaguars to clean that one up. It's a good unit choice. It could have gone quite wrong, but there were just enough of the Mousers to get it done. This is actually a case where potentially Bulls might have been more useful, but if you manage to succeed in winning this engagement using the Mousers, they'll be more useful for pushing, and especially against what the teal player has. And now there's a very large metal field right for reclaim, and so we'll see hopefully a Cookie grabbing a lot of that. Something also interesting to note, all of these T2 units were produced before grabbing the T2 constructor and getting those T2 mexes. A mistake that a lot of players make is that they choose to follow the same build order every single time. When you get the T2 lab up, you get the T2 constructor, you start building the T2 mexes. It makes sense, but only if you can afford to have the eco versus the units. Sometimes a unit push is significantly more powerful. Even a handful of T2 units at the right time can push your opponent back, destroy some of their eco, maybe take their lab, could even stop them from doing a T2 transition of their own. And that's the sort of state of game that you need to try to think about when you're playing this. You have to try and work out what your best move is at the time. It's all well and good to have your strategy, but you then need to adapt it to the situation at hand. The situation at hand right now is Cookie using his T1 units and his faster units to break into his opponent's base via the open lane which happened next to him, because we did have players leaving after being defeated. It's not a perfect representation because this group of units may not have gotten through in a lobby full of higher OS players, but the interesting thing is about the identification of the pathway in. It's about defending with the units that are capable of defending, which is sniping the fat boy with the Mousers, keeping the pressure on, and then pushing into the base. So very, very well done there by Cookie Destroyer, and showing us exactly how to adapt a high metal map into an advantage, and then from an advantage into a win. Well done to the rest of the team as well. We're just going to do a quick look at some of the engagements in the middle of the map, and then we're going to. And then we'll end this one out, so bear with me while we swap to that video. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we're jumping into a little clip here. This is a argument around defenses, units, and engagements. We see the green player has quite a lot of defenses. They're building more, but they're up against Rocketeers. The Rocketeers are not going to care about those LLTs, but the important part is what I'm doing right now with those, with the pawns. I pulled them off to the side because I knew that the Rocketeers didn't need enough defense. I had the comm there, I had the LLTs there, and by drawing them off to the side, I pulled all of the units out of the LLT range and engaged outside of the LLT range. So I was actually able to very efficiently trade. I also pulled towards the light green player and then moved around to the back over here to try and get damage done. I don't care about the comm. I don't care about the LLTs. My units will siege those down slowly. I want his mexes, I want his energy production, I want his build power, I want his ability to play the game to be removed from the game. And so that's what I'm sending my units out. Things I should have done here, I should have split them up. I could have gone down both rows and I could have grabbed the entire lot of mexes, but it is what it is. That's just the idea here. It's just to try to do damage to what matters in the game, not what doesn't. Also, you need to make sure when you build an LLT in the base that it can actually fire. Building the radar directly in front caused problems, and it is going to allow me to grab the lab, While this has been going on, my units should have been on more of a fight command just to keep pushing in. They were fight commanded, just only to this point. I also could have split a couple of units off to try and go deeper, but it wouldn't have mattered because of those LLTs, but we wouldn't know that, so you got to try and make those sorts of decisions. This is the next important engagement. I don't need to fight my opponent. My opponent's basically done. And the guy next to me pulled all of his units to defend. So I can just go into his defenses. And again, large number of LLTs. The LLTs are very good in a straight up fight, but they don't help a lot against the Rocketeers. And so I was able to very much so help out the lane next to me and get a lot of damage done. And this is, again, this is what you need to do for a team game, and an important thing here is to grab reclaim. I did let my comm slip into LLT range, don't worry about that. Mistakes happen, they always will, but it's plays like this that are going to make a difference, because if you can get to a staggered line, which is what this is, this green player their defenses were here. After my push, my green player's defenses were here. I now have this window to slip in and attack from the side, so I only have to deal with one LLT at a time, and if he pulls his defenses, he's vulnerable to everything else that the brown player may or may not have. And this is one of the ways that you can help break lines like this. So that's just a quick little clip, decent engagements, and part of the learning experience to try and make a lot of this happen. It very much so is about helping your teammates, playing as a team, and trying to win battles with overwhelming odds, so you take minimal casualties and you can stack those armies over time, and in particular grabbing those reclaim fields. That'll help a lot. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, sorry it was such a quick one this week. We did have a lot on our plates at the moment, but the new series is starting up. We've started playing games for that one. Hang out for a couple of weeks. Intermission will be over soon, and then we're going to have a beautiful Road to 30 OS. You may or may not have seen the short. It's a good time. Join us on the Discord if you want to play with us Wednesday nights or King of the Hill Sunday nights. Like, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff, and I'll catch you in the next one.